The public is being conditioned to look at the sky. The Pentagon confirms contracts for missile defense programs, such as the one awarded to AST Space Mobile, source number 1, reinforcing a narrative of kinetic threats from above. This is a strategic misdirection. The mathematical reality is that for a state approaching insolvency, source number 3, the cost of asymmetric kinetic war is no longer a variable. It is a non-starter. The real vector of attack is not fire. It is silence. The protocol for disabling a modern hegemon is not to challenge its military, but to sever its nervous system. According to Rusi, over 95% of global financial data and communications travel through a finite number of undersea fiber optic cables. These are the unprotected arteries of the world economy. The second front of this silent war is orbital. The objective is not destruction, but sensory deprivation. Satellite blinding. The same networks designed for communication and defense can be leveraged to create informational blackouts, rendering command and control systems inert. You don't need to sink a carrier group if it cannot receive targeting data. This dual-vector attack is designed to create the ultimate systemic liability, the blind Leviathan. A state with immense, unparalleled military power, but with no eyes, no ears, and no ability to process information. It is a state that is simultaneously the most powerful and most vulnerable entity on the planet. Its strength becomes a liability, thrashing in an informational void, unable to distinguish friend from foe. This is the calculated endpoint of asymmetric escalation. The motive is not ideology. It is insolvency. A nation-state does not initiate kinetic action without an expected return. But when the kinetic cost of a conventional war exceeds a state's economic capacity, it triggers a solvency crisis on the battlefield. The state can no longer afford the assets required for a symmetric victory. CSS analysis on Russia frames the conflict as an escalating domestic liability, an unpopular war draining a treasury already buckling under sanctions. This is the financial predicate for a strategic pivot. This is where weakness forces a protocol shift. When a state cannot afford to win and cannot afford to lose, it is mathematically cornered. The only remaining variable is the rule set. The pivot to asymmetry is not a desperate gamble. It is a calculated portfolio adjustment. The objective shifts from winning the war to making the cost of engagement unbearable for the adversary. This is achieved by abandoning expensive symmetric attrition and adopting high-leverage, low-cost vectors of attack against non-military targets. The system is designed to select for this outcome. The economics of lethality have inverted. The Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, puts the kinetic cost of a modern main battle tank at approximately $5 million. The cost of the first-person view drone that can execute it is $500. This is not a balanced equation. It is a solvency crisis for conventional military doctrine. The traditional model, which relied on prohibitive costs to maintain a monopoly on force, is now bankrupt. The math dictates that for every asset a state deploys, an adversary can deploy 10,000 liabilities. This radical cost disparity enables what strategists refer to as the democratization of violence. The capacity to project decisive kinetic force is no longer the exclusive domain of solvent superpowers. It has been decentralized, made available to any actor who can afford a commercially available device. This shatters the entire framework of deterrence. A state's fleet of aircraft carriers becomes a questionable asset when it can be threatened by a swarm of low-cost autonomous systems. The economic barrier to entry for large-scale disruption has effectively been removed. This is the mathematical accelerant for asymmetric escalation. When a nation's fiat currency is devaluing and its treasury is insolvent, it cannot afford a symmetric platform-on-platform war. As Ukrainian pilots have demonstrated, NATO's established rulebook is obsolete against a determined, adaptive adversary. Therefore, a cornered power, unable to afford to win and unable to afford to lose, is systemically forced to shift its strategy. It must leverage low-cost, high-impact vectors. This is the blueprint, making previously unthinkable actions a logical, calculated necessity. The geographic theaters of conflict are decentralizing. Incidents flagged in official travel advisories from South Africa to Canada are not random societal fractures. They are symptoms. According to CSIS assessments, these regions of escalating instability are being leveraged as proxy laboratories. They function as gray zones, strategically selected environments for staging and refining the next generation of asymmetric attack vectors. This is not a theory. It is a protocol dictated by economic reality. A state facing a solvency crisis, as described by Dalio's fiat currency warnings, source number 3, cannot afford the kinetic cost of asymmetric war. When its military doctrine is also rendered obsolete, as Ukrainian pilots discovered with NATO F-16 tactics, source number 4, the strategic calculus demands a new battlefield. These proxy laboratories offer plausible deniability and a low-cost environment to test the weaponization of civilian infrastructure, such as the satellite protocols being integrated into missile defense systems. Source number 1. The objective is to perfect a launch-on-warning capability for non-military, high-value assets. The escalating rhetoric between state actors, source number 2, is the public-facing narrative that obscures this operational shift. While the world watches a diplomatic exchange, the real work is being done in these gray zones. They are the franchising hubs for a new model of conflict, where the primary liability is not losing a tank battle, but losing control of the systems that underpin civilian life. The front line is no longer a trench. It is the vulnerable node in your nation's critical infrastructure network, and its attack vector is being perfected thousands of miles away. The launch-on-warning protocol is not a policy of aggression. It is a mathematical response to terminal velocity. When an adversary's missile can traverse continents in under 30 minutes, waiting for impact confirmation is not a strategy. It is suicide. The protocol is a brutal equation. If early warning systems detect a high-confidence launch, you retaliate before the first warhead destroys your ability to respond. It is a protocol designed to preempt the decapitation of your command and control. This entire systemic failsafe is predicated on one fragile assumption: data integrity. An adversary facing a solvency crisis, source number 3, and military obsolescence, source number 4, will not engage in a symmetric, kinetic conflict they cannot afford. They will seek asymmetric leverage. According to reports from RUSI, the new primary vector is not the missile itself, but the data that tracks it. The integration of commercial systems into military architecture, such as AST Spacemobile's role in missile defense, source number 1, creates a vast, soft attack surface. You don't need to defeat a carrier group, you need to corrupt a single data packet. This creates the fog of digital war. For the commander in the bunker, the critical question is no longer, are we under attack? It is this data real? A radar blackout is indistinguishable from a decapitation strike in its initial phase. The protocol demands a response. The fear of inaction forces a decision. The mathematical liability is that the system is now primed to react to a ghost, a digital spoof engineered to trigger an irreversible, world-ending action. This is the ultimate outcome of asymmetric escalation. When a state cannot afford the kinetic cost to win and cannot afford the political cost to lose, it will exploit the protocols of its enemy. Escalating rhetoric, like that between the US and Iran, source number 2, tightens the decision loop and increases the odds of miscalculation. A cyber attack that forces a nuclear power to choose between launching on a false alarm or risking annihilation is the most leveraged hostile act conceivable. It weaponizes an adversary's own deterrence against them. The convergence of a fiat currency solvency crisis, source number 3, and the demonstrated failure of legacy military doctrine, Source number 4 creates a mathematical certainty of asymmetric escalation. The blueprint for this escalation is not kinetic, it is logistical. When adversaries cannot symmetrically challenge a military, they attack its economic center of gravity. Reports from CSIS confirm that hybrid warfare now prioritizes systemic disruption over physical destruction. The calibration shot will occur within the next 12 months. Expect a coordinated, non-kinetic shutdown of a Tier 1 U.S. port. The event will combine a cyber attack on terminal operating systems with localized spoofing of satellite navigation and communication signals, leveraging vulnerabilities in dual-use civilian military assets like those referenced in the AST Space Mobile Defense Contract. Source Not 1. Official attribution will be impossible, blamed on a cascading system failure or non-state actors to avoid a launch-on warning response. It will be a deliberate, measured test of economic resilience and political resolve. A signal.